And
Yeah.
as a leader at a school,
Yeah.
what are things that are influencing you now? You can share a little bit about your fabrications lab and things that you're doing at TVT, but basically, how does a student who comes to high school, let's say TVT,
Yeah.
and doesn't know they are interested in STEAM versus a student who comes and knows they already are? How does one, how do each of these students end up with the same goal, which is to major in something in STEAM, right? So how
Yeah.
would someone who, how do we nurture an interest that maybe is there, but they don't know it, versus someone who knows it?
Well, the person who knows it, you want to make sure that what they know or what they think they know actually is based in reality and truth, right? Because sometimes people will think they understand a thing, but not fully understand it, right? And the student who doesn't understand it at all, you have an opportunity to provide them with some frameworks of understanding themselves, because ultimately learning is about orienting yourself to different fields of knowledge, bodies of knowledge, and different kinds of problem solving, right? So what we do is that we provide uh, uh, low barrier of entry electives in middle school and in high school for students who want to experiment with one or another of these kind of STEAM oriented programs. For us at TVT, the main STEAM program is engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
But engineering is about design and about mathematics and about uh, designing solutions to problems that are highly constrained, right? So a lot of it is about fitting solutions into really complicated problem sets, right?
So,
Whereas, yeah, go.
yeah, so uh, it's interesting that you're saying, it's about design, because I always ask students, you want to major in engineering, why? What does that mean to you?
Yeah,
What does that look like? What kind of engineering? So I'm curious to know how you, and then we have, women or maybe students of color who
right,
maybe haven't been introduced and or have this notion that STEAM is hard. Uh,
right.
how do we cross those barriers? How do we, how do we demystify it, or how do we simplify it in layman's terms for people to understand? Engineering is not this, crazy thing that only a few people can do. It's about design. It's about, breaking it down. How do you break it down?
Right. Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the important thing is um, you have to also educate parents, right? So they understand what it is, right? Because the home environment is where a lot of essential learning is going to take place. So if parents understand what it is and they understand the relationship between the parts, then they can do part of the work as well, right? In our middle school, we have an elective wheel in grade 6 where every student takes engineering and other things, right? So every student in our school is exposed to it in some way, and basically they go through a single design challenge over the course of the quarter. Okay, right. So and the teacher decides differently, right? So it could be um, we're going to simulate the landing of the Perseverance rover by you having to design some kind of a protection system that will keep an egg from cracking if you drop it from the roof of the school building, kind of thing, right? I mean, and these are classic solution problems, right? But they're not often deployed with sixth graders, right? And so, it's deployed, that way with all sixth graders, right? I think if we I think if we continue to show through programs like that and other programs at your school that all of these pieces fit together, then any of them, which may be areas of anxiety for students, they all sort of become less and less and less anxious, right? Technology has a mathematics component, aesthetics and arts has a science component. All these things sort of fit together, right? So entrepreneurial teams that I've worked with to design any number of products and solutions, once the students realize, oh, I totally see why the geometry I did last year applies in this case. It's like, right, basically now, friends, you're at a point where you are now involved in a complex geometry problem. And by complex, I just mean that it's lengthy. It's not hard.
Oh,
It just
good.
has a lot of steps, okay?
Ooh,
All you need to do is drive through it, okay? Because your solution at the end is essentially a geometric solution, right? So you're going to apply math to solve a problem of social justice, in this case, housing, okay? And once you have your solution, you can go into the fabrication lab and essentially print a scale model of your design using the vacuum form plastic printer, basically. It's not a 3D printer, right? You make a mold and then it makes shapes in, it's like bent wood, except it's bent plastic, right? So for me, it's, take it, have an opportunity to take it, and continually remind students and parents that there isn't anything especially mystifying about these fields, and everything that you're going to learn is going to require reaching, being sometimes in a flow state where things really are coming really not easily, but you feel like I'm being really productively challenged. Then there'll be times when you feel sort of dysregulated in flow, and it's like, this is a little too easy, or this is much too hard. That's perfectly normal. But that's true in any discipline, if you ask me, right?
Absolutely.
Just because you can read doesn't mean that you can understand something going on in Kafka, or in a piece of really innovative 21st century film.
I love you, Jon. So here's my practical question, because I'm taking notes. And I forgot to say, audience, if you're listening, there's a bunch of golden nuggets that Jon has just dropped, and you should take notes. And one of the things I wrote down is these design challenges and informing and educating parents.
Yep.
So can you offer for our parents, what are some good questions to ask at home, or some good conversations? And the reason I'm asking this is because, excuse me, I believe in failure. And I know that in entrepreneurship, in problem solving, it takes risks. So I can't remember who shared with me, but some parent I talked to says, we used to always ask, what did you fail at this week? What was the biggest failure? So share with our parents, what are some good questions or discussions to have at home that might lead to a student perhaps reconsidering an interest in STEAM?
Well, I think that if I were giving this advice to a parent in my office, right? If I was a principal, or if someone had come to me, I would say, I think the best way to approach this, and also frankly to cultivate the relationship you want ultimately to build with your child when they are an adult, right, is to usher the child into your own work problems. Okay, right? So here is something that a team I'm working with has been working on. How would you approach problem X, Y, or Z, right? And keep in mind that STEAM is a gestalt as well as its separate fields of discipline. It's a way of thinking, right? So you encourage STEAM thinking by encouraging students to use the tools of the engineer, break everything down into smaller parts, okay? Or the technologist, right? What are pre-existing technologies that could be melded in a way that might productively solve the problem, okay? So you encourage the development of STEAM thinking by asking students to solve problems within their own workspace, okay? And then that also helps to cultivate relationship building, right? Now, once you've built a level of trust there, then the parent can say, tell me about something that didn't work in your own, right? Tell me about an iteration of something that you've done that didn't really work, how you got through it, right? And so dinner time conversations become about riffing on interesting problems, right? So, I mean, that would be my advice.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And I love how you laid out for the parent, write this down. You involve them and engage them into your own world or your own, what work problems.
Right.
And then you've developed that trust that you value your team's input, interest, opinion, thoughts, and then they'll more open to share their, it's a risk to share a failure, right? It's a risk for anybody to share. It's a risk to take on something and think, oh, I'm going to fail. But teaching, I think that a lot of this, we have to teach that failure is good, because you don't get to the better, you don't get to improve until you fail.
Right.
So
now, Cynthia, to that end, okay?
Yeah.
If your kid is a gamer, video gamer, and you do what I just said, you can then go and, if they're willing, you can observe them, watch them playing whatever game they're interested in, because there is no better vehicle to understanding failure as a tool to ultimate success than watching and playing complicated video games, okay?
Good.
Now, the game that I play, video game that I play, is called World of Warcraft, okay? It's got tens of millions of subscribers. It's been played for 15 years, 16 years, right? It has a million different micro games within it. Sorry, hold on one second. Sorry. But the most difficult part of the game is called raiding, okay? And raiding requires a team of between 10 and 40 players who could be global. They could be from anywhere, okay? Sorry. They have to coordinate what they're doing sufficiently well to overcome a variety of game mechanical challenges that an opponent, a boss is what they're called, is presenting, okay? Now, it is not at all uncommon for a well-functioning raiding team that is doing excellent work to need 25, 50 attempts to defeat a boss before they actually do it, okay? Not at all uncommon. And the game is tiered so that there are sort of easy, medium, and hard, and then very hard raids, right? Well, in these very, very hard expressions of the raid, it could take 300 or 400 times of trying and it doesn't work, and trying and it doesn't work, and you go back and you talk about it and it doesn't work, right? You want to look at highly complex team coordination, communication, problem solving.
Yeah.
Look at any, YouTube channel, Twitch stream that's doing quote unquote mythic raiding, okay? And you'll totally see it. Now, your kids may not play World of Warcraft, but if they play any games, they play Rocket League, they play Fortnite, they play Minecraft doesn't really work like this, but they play any of these kind of games collaboratively.
Well,
all of this is in there, right?
But okay, so I'm taking what you've just said and are teaching me. I'm learning a lot about this gaming stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and applying it practically
Yeah.
to the world of college admissions, right? Because, I'll have parents who say he's playing video games all the time. Like, that's not interesting. And I sort of go against that. I'm like, well, why does he or she, play these games, or what is the interest? And then we sort of
Right.
talk together. But what you're talking about is the lessons, really, if you can be reflective of what are you learning? There's teamwork, there's collaboration, there's scaling, there's getting better, there's failure. There's so many things to talk about that are applicable, transferable skills that one will need for said major, said career choice, said whatever. And that's really, at the end of the day.
I don't care about the game at the end of the day. I care about the metacognitive skills you learn by playing a game, okay? If you play a game, board game, tabletop, role-playing game, video game, and you have to struggle to overcome a very difficult challenge and constantly pivot your thinking and your approach and the way you're solving problems in order to accomplish the goal so that you can move on through the story.
Mm-hmm.
You have learned something profoundly powerful to the rest of your life. You've learned that failing on a task isn't the end of the world. You just have to restart, okay? You've learned that you can overcome very complicated problems and do so in a way that leaves you with the skill set where you go back 6 months later and you look at that boss who you now defeat easily and you remember it was impossible. In this regard, it's exactly the same as going from, say, Spanish 2 to Spanish 3 or Latin 2 to Latin 3. Everyone knows that language X, 1 and 2 are easy. It's when you get to the third level that it becomes hard, right? And you plateau and you don't know what you're doing. And then 6 months from then, you go back and look at what you couldn't do in September, but what you can now do in March, and you're astounded. That builds confidence that just because you don't know something right now doesn't mean you're never going to know it. Right. Just because you can't do something right now doesn't mean you never will be able to, right? It's not about the game. It's about the metacognition, right?
Absolutely.
And therefore, it doesn't matter what the game is. They all have value, right? And if your kid likes playing them, watch them play. Play yourself.
Yeah.
Quit complaining that your kid is playing video games and play them yourself.
Oh, there you go.
And see what you get out of it.
Yeah. No,
right?
It's true. It's true. It's true. And it speaks to the point of, meet your kid where your kid is. And go from there.
And be balanced, right? You're not going to want your kid to be working out at the gym for 6 hours a day or only doing pleasure reading for 6 hours a day, right, or only watching very high quality television for 6 hours a day. You want your kid to develop a balanced life,
right?
Right? And look at your own life. Is your own life out of balance? Well, what are you teaching your children?
Right. Oh, right? There you go. Oh, there's a golden nugget if I've ever heard one. Yes, right? We are modeling for our kids. Exactly.
Right.
If there is something that you want, a habit that they have that you want to change, then maybe look at your own. So.
Right.